If this series keeps going at this rate, I'll be making retrospective videos until I'm 75. A demo dropped not too long ago for Visions of Mana, and I'm pretty much obligated to play it. And before someone says it, I know the characters say mana in the demo.
It's still a long way to get to the Tree of Mana.
But one, I legit feel an uncomfortable pinch inside my nose saying it that way, and two, it's not consistent everywhere, so who cares? After all, according to the Fairy in the Trials remake, it's pronounced Mana.
Goddess of Mana! Let's go to the Mana Stones! We're trying to get to the Sanctuary of Mana.
Which I guess means it's canon that the fairies are from Wisconsin.
Now hit reverse and the gas.
The demo covers about 4 or 5 areas and a boss, with 3 playable characters and one girl who just follows Val, the guy with the big sword, and monologues a few times. If you played the Trials of Mana remake, this will look and feel very familiar. The good news is that the most important part, the gameplay, still feels pretty damn good. It's very similar to the Trials remake with a couple extra touches to set it apart. The ring menu that's not really a ring menu for items, abilities, and magic is still around. The HUD was updated, which I still don't know how to feel about that. And you can't run from several encounters, which I really don't know how to feel about that. Or if that's just a demo thing. But the attack system and the way magic works are very similar. The AI options for the teammates seem to work well enough and cover things like basic tactics, enemy targeting, item and magic use, and which moves and magic to use. Some characters have elemental vessels associated with them, allowing for not just magic use but vessel abilities, which can both help get past environmental obstacles and fight enemies, like how the Luna Globe can slow down time for enemies and moving platforms, and speed up various cooldowns for allies inside of it. Not sure how this setup affects being able to cast a wider variety of spells given the limits of the demo. In addition, the vessels can be used in the field to access trials of mana. Also in the field are various subquests to find, like in other action RPGs such as Xenoblade, and powered-up enemies to fight called Nemesis. They're basically like named enemies in Diablo or the elite or unique monsters in Xenoblade, and they do give more of a challenge than and a break from regular enemies. Thankfully, it's easy to tell how strong enemies are compared to the party thanks to a color-coded level system for the enemy names, which gave me hardcore EverQuest flashbacks. There are also a ton of items to find, both in treasure chest form and as drops like Grizzly Syrup. Getting around to find all of this is easy for several reasons, such as sprinting, paired with the ability to vault over objects automatically, like fences or, for some reason, very small rocks. Characters can double jump and then dash in midair multiple times, except in towns. Gravity increases with each dash, but this can still cover a fair amount of distance and let you platform on things you probably aren't supposed to. Swimming is an option now, though if you can dive, I couldn't figure out how. There are fast travel points to get in and out of towns and across areas quickly, and then there's the pickles.
Pickle surprise!
Instead of riding an ancient turtle or Flammy, and no, that's not Flammy, the obligatory travel animal here is the pickle, which looks like a cross between a Scottish and Yorkshire Terrier and will probably show up as a plushie in the Square-enix online store. It can move much faster than the characters and run over and damage enemies. But this is out of combat, so they just regenerate immediately. And I guess it's appropriate you can make the pickle chase its own tail. Now the Trials remake was a big step up from the Secret of Mana remake pretty much across the board, but it still had a few drawbacks in terms of presentation.
Everyone, retreat!
And Visions of Mana seems to suffer from similar problems. I'll start with the more subjective, your mileage may vary kind of issues that I had, before getting into the more objective, fix this if you possibly can problems. I had a couple issues with the translation of some things, like how the elements listed for this game are fire, water, wind, earth, darkness, light, moon, and wood. I mean, technically Dryad is wood of a sort, but she's typically referred to as the tree elemental.
Tree.
Even if you don't want to say tree, Something like nature would be a bit more elegant than just saying wood, like she's a Mega Man robot. Some conversations seem to go on for too long, and some contribute so little they could easily be removed entirely without missing anything. I haven't mentioned the story at all because, 1, the demo starts in the middle of the game, and 2, after a while I tuned out most of what everyone was saying because a lot of it sounded like filler dialogue. Characters from other Mana games or references to them can be a bit out of place. For one, Lil Cactus from Legend of Mana shows up almost immediately. He seems to be here solely for the diary system, though from what I saw, Lil Cactus is a bit less snarky in this game. Speaking of characters that got on my nerves...
Niccolo and I have long been wanting something like this for you.
Fuck Niccolo!
Thank you, Mil.
The Dud Bears are also here. For some reason. Alright, so the grizzly syrup found in the field can be exchanged for items with these guys. But like the Lil Cactus Diary, this is a system that could be run by any character. I know Koichi Ishii said that characters who appear in multiple games are considered alternate reality versions of each other. It's just a bit awkward, like seeing the nurses or Pyramid Head in Silent Hill games and movies that aren't Silent Hill 2. It's one of those, why is this guy here kind of situations. Oh, and this ship is named Prim. That's less egregious, it just kind of caught me off guard at first. Speaking of awkward, in terms of sound, the acting is decent for the most part, but there are a few instances where a character will say anything from 2 to 4 lines in a row, and they all sound like they were recorded at very different times and then haphazardly spliced together.
Key back on that official. Oh well, at least Karina's in the clear. We should be able to set sail now. Am I missing anything? Better check before getting on the boat.
Speaking of direction choices, why does Karina, the Dragonoid character, have a southern drawl?
What? Me? No way. I'm having the time of my life.
Thanks, Captain Obvious. I can tell there are more out there.
Guess everyone's got a story, don't they? Life's full of surprises.
I tell you this as someone who a good portion of his family is from/in the southern US or the Appalachias. Karina's voice became grating after a relatively short amount of time. That's likely just a me thing though. I made the mistake of watching the Wild Arms anime, and I'm convinced that for the rest of my life, I'll have a fight or flight response to this type of southern dialect coming from a Japanese-style animated character. And then there's the other kind of sound, specifically the sound coming from my controller. For some reason, the bulk of the game's notification sounds for things like low health, level ups, special attacks, ability gauges filling, earning experience points, and picking up items play through the controller's speaker, as well as random stuff like ticking through individual items in a menu and then selecting an option. The former may help someone who has the volume on their TV turned down, but the menu sounds coming through the controller, that's just redundant, and they got annoying really fast. There was no in-game option for controlling this, so I had to back out of the game to turn it off. Alright, now for the more clear-cut issues, some of which are pretty baked into the loaf and I don't expect to be fixed. First off, the visual effects from things like the vessel abilities made it almost impossible to see at one point. Character animations were a problem in the Trials remake, and it seems like Visions will have that problem too. I'm not talking about the lip sync being off, though that does happen, or how characters will pull a Looney Tunes and keep running in midair for a bit after going off a ledge, or whatever Val's feet are doing here. I'm talking about the character animations in cutscenes. When they aren't recycling the same canned animation over and over, the characters tend to look really robotic. This isn't helped by the apparent inability of characters to change facial expressions without a camera cut, leading to both scenes with people smiling while they sound anything but happy, and a couple frames at the beginning of each cut where part of the background hasn't loaded in yet. Some character animations extend well beyond when people stop talking, which gives me really bad Bloody Roar 4 flashbacks. Yes, I did just make that comparison.
Just say the word.
Also not helping is the camera focusing on people who aren't talking. someone decided that it was best to have the backs of people's heads in the foreground for a few cutscenes, usually while they're talking, which just made it apparent how much everyone else looks like a theme park mascot with nobody inside the suit. Now I should note I played this demo on a PS5, and that's where all the footage you're seeing is from. And given the general graphical fidelity of the game, I was really surprised to see the frame rate noticeably drop at times. And yes, I did select prioritize performance when the game started. Actually, I should rephrase that a bit. It isn't that the frame rate for everything dropped in many scenes, it's that sometimes some parts of a scene had a worse frame rate than other parts of the same scene. This was most noticeable on the ship, as the ship and the people on it had one frame rate, but the water it was sailing through looked like it was missing several frames. This is a pretty common developer trick to make games run smoother, but it's usually for background elements, not times where those background elements are the only thing on screen or in the foreground and therefore impossible to not notice. With all that being said, am I still getting this game? Yes. Probably as soon as it releases. As long as the gameplay is still at minimum as enjoyable as that of the Trials remake, and the story isn't just outright terrible, I'll likely end up having a good time with this. Also like the Trials remake, I expect to both roll my eyes and laugh out loud at any unintentional comedy the cutscenes produce. And hopefully most of them aren't as long-winded as a couple of scenes in the demo. Yeah, she's gonna keep talking for a while, so I'll just cut the video here.